OK, let's go back to Geneva now, where you can see Agnes Callamard there, the UN Special Rapporteur, who has presented her report into the murder of Jamal Khashoggi to the Human Rights Council. Let's hear what she's saying.
What I was not able to do, which is to really determine with certainty individual liability for the crime, including at the highest level. Madam Khadija, in her statement, which was undoubtedly the most powerful of these 4 hours, asked who ordered the crime, who turned a blind eye to the crime, who incited the crimes. None of those questions have been answered. Where is the body? That too has not been answered. That's what a criminal investigation should do. That's why I have asked for the Security General to put in place such an international team of criminal investigators. In my view, to take a strong stand now, to demonstrate that the international community will not turn a blind eye to a crime that has been denounced repeatedly, that has attracted the attention of all the media of many countries in the world, not turning a blind eye to a crime that involves one of the most powerful countries in the world. That will be the most effective and strong signal that killing journalists cannot be tolerated, whether domestically or extraterritorially, and that killing a journalist by a powerful state will not be tolerated. That is why I'm calling on member states, the Secretary General and others to act now. Thank you.
Thank you, and yes, first question is from Catherine, France 24.
Bonjour, Madame.
Bonjour.
Yes. I would like to ask a question about what you put on the head of your recommendations regarding an action of the UN Secretary General, Mr. Guterres, to conduct an international, ask for an international investigation with a group of experts. His spokesperson, Mr. Dujarric, said that it was not in the power of UNSG Guterres to do so. We've seen that it happened, I think, 7 times in the past with other UNSG. What is your reaction to that? Thank you.
Yes, so my reaction to the spokesperson was disappointed. I was disappointed. It is a gray area of the United Nations and of the prerogative of the Secretary General. I am absolutely not suggesting that it is written black on white, that he has the prerogative to do that. However, what I am suggesting is that it is in his power to interpret the rules as they are, to give himself the opportunity and the power to establish this panel of experts. It is, in my view, not required for a Security Council resolution for such an investigation to take place. I do not even believe that you need a member state official demand. This being said, I certainly call on member states to proceed with that official démarche so that the Secretary General will not be able to just create more firewalls between him and his responsibilities to take action against impunity.
Thank you, Asahi.
Hello, I'm from the Japanese newspaper Asahi Shimbun. I have a question about the G20 meeting in Osaka at the end of this week. Some country may raise the Khashoggi killing, this issue during bilateral meetings with Saudi Arabia. And according to you, I would like to know what should country do on the occasion of this summit, given that the Saudi Crown Prince will be present?
Well, I have made a number of recommendations in my reports regarding measures that member states could take. I have insisted that the killing of Mr. Khashoggi is a state killing. It is not a killing by rogue officials, as the government continued to pretend, at least under international human rights law. It is therefore important for the country that will be present during the G20 to insist to insist that the state of Saudi Arabia do take its full responsibility for the killings. I have suggested that individualized sanctions are not enough, and that it is now important for the international community to take the full implications of the nature of the crimes, which is a state crimes. That's what I'm hoping they will be able to talk about. I have, among other things, suggested a moratorium on the export of surveillance technology to Saudi Arabia, because technological surveillance of people abroad who have sought safety abroad is A, a violation of their right, and B, is usually an early warning for much greater harm.
Thank you, Gabriela.
Thank you very much, Gabriela Sotomayor, Mexico Proceso. On accountability, if there is no international investigation and with the evidence of your report, are there other ways to obtain justice? I'm thinking about Pinochet's case, for example. After your investigation, do you think that the government of the United States could have known that Jamal Khashoggi was in danger and could have warned him? I mean, they know that they were under surveillance.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions. So there are at least three options for judicial accountability. One, Turkey. So I have suggested a public inquest out of Turkey, because the Turkish authorities have a great deal of information about the killings. It is important for this information to be made in the public domain, and for everyone else to take the implications of what they have, which has not yet been put in the public domain. To the United States, as I have called in my report for an FBI investigation, it has a mandate under the US law for undertaking an investigation into any issues that concern American interest or American people. Well, in that case, an American interest. I have suggested such an investigation. But in addition, there will be complaints made in the United States at some point, because of the interest of many people in the US, including people who knew him, his friends, his colleagues, his families, and his employers. So that's the second option. Third option is universal jurisdiction. It's a complex issue, which I don't think I'm going to get into the details now. In my report, I detail and I explain why, in my view, the killing of Mr. Khashoggi meet the criteria to be treated as an international crime, calling for universal jurisdiction. That, in my view, would be an additional option. And fourthly, of course, we can always hope that Saudi Arabia will be prepared to invite international support and assistance to move ahead with a trial that will meet international guarantees.
Thank you. Laurent Swiss-Info.
Yeah, Laurent Siro, Swiss News Agency. A follow-up question on the scenario of an official demand by a state. For now, the report was released 1 week ago. Since then, and even in the debate today, there was no sign from any state to launch a support for such a call to the SG for a criminal investigation, nor for the more permanent instrument that you would like to be launched on a broader term. Tonight, are you pessimistic about the feasibility of that scenario? And there were a lot of distrust these recent years around collective international justice. Do you think that this case will fix the future of collective international justice?
So regarding the international mechanism that I have suggested, I am not yet pessimistic. I think these are complex questions. I didn't hear as much as you did the rejection of moving forward with a formal request. I think couple of states may have hinted to it. So on that front, I'm hoping that a few states will be convinced to demand at least a panel of criminal experts to identify the form and nature of liability for that killing. With regard to the standing instrument, it is not going to happen overnight. The establishment of an instrument for Syria, the IIIM, or for the investigation into the use of chemical weapons have taken many efforts. What I am suggesting is basically the equivalent for the investigation of targeted killings. If it were to happen overnight, I will be a little bit, utterly surprised and dumbfounded. So I think it's up to us now, to you, including you, because the media has a big role to play, since one of the primary victims of targeted killings right now are journalists, human rights defenders as well, NGOs. All of us have a role to play in convincing the international community that this is the most effective way of moving forward. The paralysis that we are witnessing, the ping-pong games between who can do what, the inability of the Secretary General to determine whether or not he can move with something, all of those things will be solved if there was a standing instrument who could just take upon itself to investigate this kind of crime. So I think it will solve a lot of issues, including the ongoing crisis that the killing of Mr. Khashoggi represents and will continue to represent. My report and your presence there is just a moment in time. I have no doubt, based on my many conversations, that there will be more such moments coming up. And therefore, it is really important for the international community to try to put in place mechanisms so that we can handle that far more effectively and with justice in mind.
Perhaps just a couple of more quick questions on the other side. Freddie?
Merci Madame Agnès, félicitations pour votre rapport. Vous parlez de crimes d'État. Ma question est toute simple par rapport à votre propre vie. Est-ce que, depuis que vous avez publié ces rapports, est-ce que vous vous sentez libre? Est-ce que vous êtes menacé? Est-ce que vous recevez des menaces? Parce que l'Arabie Saoudite, c'est quand même un grand pays qui a des pétrodollars. Est-ce que vous êtes toujours libre et vous n'avez pas de menaces?
Écoutez, pour l'instant, je n'ai pas reçu de menaces, en tout cas pas des menaces physiques directement.
All right, Agnes Callamard is understandably now replying in French, so we'll take this opportunity to go to our correspondent Hashim Al-Bara, who will reply to me in English. He's live for us in Geneva and has been listening to what she's had to say. Something that really struck me, actually, Hashim, is that in her comments, in her answers to journalists there, she's actually been rather critical of not just the office of the Secretary General, but also the man himself. She's suggested that he could actually do a lot more with regard to setting up this international criminal inquiry, which she says is essential.
Indeed, Martine, by the way, the last question she was asked by Swiss journalists in French about whether she feels safe after the report that she issued and whether she has any concerns that she might be getting any threats from the Saudis in the near future. And she said that for the time being, she feels confident everything should be fine. And the reason why this is quite a crucial moment, as you said, Martine, once she made the report, she started to say things for what they are. She seems to be frustrated over the United Nations' inability to launch the criminal investigation. And when she was asked about the spokesperson of the United Nations Secretary General, when he said that it's not within his mandate to launch the investigation, she said, well, nothing is set into stone. There's always this grey area, and the United Nations Secretary General could find his own ways around this. She doesn't seem to be really impressed with the track record of the international community, saying that it's about time for the international community to send a strong message to the Saudi government. There's absolutely no way a nation, whether it's a strong nation, a wealthy nation, can go away with a crime without being punished, and that ultimately the international community should convene around the idea of a mechanism, of an international panel of experts, of a criminal investigation that should be launched to give reassurances that no one would be harmed in the future, no journalist would be targeted by a government just because of his thoughts, just because of his opinions. So I think from now onwards, Agnes Callamard is using very strong words about the international establishment and architecture, saying that, well, the UN is there to move forward with action. The UN is not there just for the sake of talking. She made her work. It took her months of extensive work, but now she's looking forward to see action made.
Right. And Hashim, rather interestingly, she also suggested that the Turkish authorities put all the evidence that they have with regard to the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, bearing in mind it was committed in Saudi territory, but within the jurisdiction of the Turkish authorities. All of that, she said, should be put in the public domain. Now, the Turks have been reluctant, shall we say, to do just that. They've been imparting their knowledge of this crime drip by drip and through unofficial sources.
Indeed, I think Callamard was hoping to see different countries, different agencies come forward and provide the public with more information about what happened to Jamal Khashoggi, including the Turkish government. And I think she was hinting to the fact that the Turkish government should deliver more details about the audio recording that apparently has the final moments of Jamal Khashoggi. And she thinks that those information, the moment they are made public, they could be conducive to an international movement towards a new mechanism to prosecute those perpetrators, to the point where she was saying that she asked also the FBI to launch an investigation about the people. And it seems, Martin, that we are having now Agnes Callamard, who is going to talk to us and to give us more information about what's next for the international, what should be done. Agnes Callamard, thank you very much indeed for being with Al Jazeera. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Ms. Callamard, last time when you spoke with Al Jazeera, you gave us all the details about how this was a premeditated thing, that the Saudi government was involved, and that you think that there need to be more investigation into a possible role of the Crown Prince. The big question is, now that we know what you told us, the problem is how to move forward.
Yes. You've laid it out very well. You know, for the last four hours, member states have reacted, the vast majority in a very positive fashion to the report, to the findings and to the conclusions. Whether or not they will be prepared to do the next step, which is to call for an investigation into the determination of individual liability, I think I really don't have an answer to that. Okay. I have heard some possible interest into that next steps, but I think the next few weeks are going to tell whether or not we do see this panel being put in place.
You said that there are two countries which have hinted at possible launching.
No, a few countries.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But then when you see the news,
yeah.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was in Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. And apparently, according to sources with him, he didn't raise the issue of Khashoggi with the Saudi King Salman bin Abdulaziz. No. It could give you an indication that this does not seem to be a top priority for the Trump administration.
Look, I think at least they have they are very direct. I have to recognize that to both President Trump and Mr. Pompeo. They are not trying to hide the fact that for them, financial, commercial interest and possibly geostrategic issues should be driving their policy with Saudi Arabia. What I am suggesting, though, is that impunity for human rights violations is never a good basis for partnership, including in this very unstable environment.
One of the key findings of your report is the need for further investigation into possible role of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to the killing of Khashoggi. How direct is this involvement? You should be having some idea about.
No. What I have said in my report is that the state is responsible, okay? It is a state crime, something that the Saudi authorities have yet to recognize. Once you have determined that the state is responsible, what does that mean? What is the state? So what I am saying now, within the category of the state, there are high-level officials that are criminally responsible for the crime. It does not necessarily mean that they are responsible because they ordered the crime. They can be responsible because they directly or indirectly incited the crime, because they failed to prevent it, because they failed to stop it. And these are the kind of scenarios that I would want the follow-up criminal investigation to investigate, along with the question of who has ordered.
I've just listened to your press conference. You don't seem to be really impressed with the United Nations Secretary General, particularly when it comes to this idea that he does not have the mandate to launch a criminal investigation. You've been working very hard on this issue for months. You've gathered extensive material about the circumstances surrounding the killing of Jamal Khashoggi. Why is the UN saying they cannot do this?
Well, I think this is something that you have to ask the Secretary General. I don't know. I have undertaken this inquiry so that the UN could be seen through me, which I'm not a UN person, I am an independent expert, but I am so committed to multilateral instrument and to the role of the UN in that kind of setting that I want to show that the UN has a meaningful role to play. I am hoping that the Secretary General will find the findings of my inquiry strong enough that he can now move with the next step.
This is going to be my last question. Do you have any concerns that your report could be shelved for the simple reason that we're talking about Saudi Arabia, which is one of the wealthiest nations of earth, with strong relations with some of the powerful countries in the world, and that many countries, key players in the international arena, are not really willing to move ahead, particularly when it comes to prosecuting or investigating someone like Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman?
Look, I have no doubt that there will be a strong incentive for countries, many countries around the world, to shelve my report. What I can only tell them are the following. My report is only one report. I can assure you that after my report, there will be more coming up. There will be your work, there will be movies, there will be documentaries, there will be more articles in the newspaper, there will be more reports by other bodies, the Committee Against Torture, the Committee Against Enforced Disappearances. So it's not the end of the journey in our search for justice, number one. Number two, our capacity as international community to hold to account a powerful state, such as Saudi Arabia, to do that credibly, to do that constructively, is a reflection of our capacity to protect human rights, to protect stability, to protect peace and multilateralism. So I think it's a challenge, but it's a challenge we've got to meet if we want to move forward.
Thank you very much indeed, United Nations Special Rapporteur Agnes Callamard. Thank you. I really appreciate your time.
Thank
you. Thank you. Thank you. Martin, so as you can see from the highlights of what Agnes Callamard said, she really thinks that it's about time the international community shows the world that it's genuine about the need to prosecute those who are involved in extrajudicial killings, those who target journalists, and that ultimately, for her and from her perspective, this is not just about rendering justice to an individual who was killed on the 2nd of October in Istanbul. It's about sending a message of peace to the international community and to the people all over the world, that there is an institution or people or agencies or organizations there willing to look for those responsible and bring them to justice. Is this call going to be heard by key players, powerful people in the international arena? It remains to be seen.